So so a few of us, myself, Maria Mendonça, can't remember anyone else starting that year, but we were certainly turned away, as Maria will probably tell you as well. She was quite amused by that. What else? Do you want to know more about those early?
Maybe I'll come back to you. Let's.
Shall I have some lunch, dinner?
And jigs.
Yes.
Could you tell who you are and what you are doing first?
Yes. My name is Margaret Coldiron, and I am an actress and a theatre director and a teacher, and I teach at the University of Essex in world performance. And I'm a member of Gamelan Lila Cita and a member of the Lila Balinese dance troupe.
Please join in while one person is chatting. So I think that would be, more, how do you say it?
Friendly.
Relaxed and friendly. Jig, could you tell us when did you start learning gamelan, or how did you start it? What inspired you?
What inspired me was that I had already been to Bali. I'd heard gamelan music a long time before and didn't know anything about it. And then I saw various performances in London. I saw the South Bank Gamelan. And then I went to Bali and I had my first taste of Balinese culture. I fell in love with Balinese topeng. And then I decided to do a PhD study on Balinese topeng, so I went back to Bali and I studied for a long time. And when I was learning to dance, my teacher had this really crummy cassette machine to play the music on that I would dance to. And he kept shouting at me to listen to the gong, but this cassette machine, you couldn't hear the gong. It was just tink, 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 tink.
Java seems to have a lo-fi approach to gamelan music as well, from what I can tell. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th generation cassettes are nothing.
Yeah, very, very bad news. So when I came back to London, I found myself working on a production of Euripides' Hippolytus, which was going to use some Balinese masks and Indonesian dance, something like Jaipongan. And through that I met Andy Channing, who was running an angklung group. And I said, oh, gamelan! I want to learn to play gamelan because I have to learn how to hear the gong. So that's how I got involved.
Interesting. I want to go back. You mentioned learning dance. How does it different learning dance in Bali and in Europe?
Well, I studied tap dancing when I was 7. I studied ballet when I was 9. I studied contemporary dance at university. I did ballet and jazz in drama school. And then I got involved in flamenco. So I'd done lots of different kinds of dance. In the West, I think dance is taught through a series of exercises, it is now, especially contemporary dance and ballet. You learn certain techniques, and then you get bits and pieces of choreography that you build on, and you may or may not get chunks of an actual ballet or an actual dance. And I did a lot of work in improvisational dance as well, contemporary improvisational dance. Balinese dance was very simple. I watched my teacher, I did exactly what he did, and that was it, really. And if I did it wrong, he would shout at me or hit me, and he would say, do it again. And then after I seemed to know what I was doing, he would let me go on by myself, and he would go out of the room and get a cup of tea. And then he would come back and say, how was that? If I was lucky. So it was a very traditional approach without any introductory exercises or any explanation of what the moves were. But I was very glad to have had that kind of very traditional village kind of training, because it helped me to understand, especially in the world of topeng, which is still taught on a kind of guru sisya sort of situation, that somebody just learns with their father or their uncle or something and follows them around with the bag and helps out in performances and learns by seeing. Now that I have a very expert teacher in London who has been taught in a conservatoire and explains to me about the choreography, I understand much better what I'm doing, and I've become a better dancer because I understand what I'm doing.
Go back to the gamelan, and then you met Andy, and then you started to learn gamelan.
Yes.
So, did you manage to hear the gong?
Well, interestingly, at first I started dancing, and again with a crappy cassette tape, and not with the gamelan, but they were playing the angklung, and I thought, well, the angklung, I don't know what an angklung is. I mean, I'd seen them, but I didn't know what it was, and they all seemed to be very expert. They were people like Nye, and I thought, oh, they know too much. But Andy said they were getting a gong kebyar soon, and sure enough,
would be easier.
yeah, somehow that was going to be easier. But I figured it would be a level playing field. Everybody would be starting on it at the same time. But of course, these guys who had been playing Javanese gamelan and angklung for all these years were really streets ahead. But yes, I started out playing jegog and chalong and sitting in the back row next to the gong. So now I hear the gong all the time.
Oh, that's good. That is an achievement, isn't it?
Yes, well, and now I finally, after 12 years or something, I finally understand what it's there for, which is the most important thing to understand.
Okay. Let's go back to Manuel or Dave. You've been to the Bali Art Festival.
Yeah.
How did you spend your time in Bali?
Well,
Or how did it go?
how did it go?
Your performance in Bali?
Oh, we rocked.
Oh yes,
Yeah, fantastic.
we were the best thing since sliced bread in Bali. Coles to Newcastle had nothing on us.
Indeed. They were flabbergasted.
They were stunned
They were stunned.
for all the right reasons.
Yes, indeed. And
You were the best thing since the act before us.
yes,
It was single-handedly the most petrifying gig I've ever done in my life.
Absolutely.
But actually a very rewarding experience as well. The thing I enjoyed most, actually, was not the final performance. It was actually getting to play and rehearse for a goodly number of hours every day.
Oh yeah.
Straight
Yes.
through for a week and more, because you really got to know what you were doing, rather than just as we do now, a few hours here and there, twice a week. I mean, that really does make a big difference. It gives you a different perspective on the whole thing.
And you could actually sense and sort of feel that these pieces were actually getting better
Yes.
day after day, rather than having to sort of half guess and remember what you did last week. Did we actually play any better this time? I'm not sure. Let's try and remember it for next week. Every day you thought, well, I messed that bit up yesterday, or I'm not doing it now. This is better. I can now concentrate on other things for periods of time and not worry about what I'm playing, because I'm sorted. My hands know what they're doing. I don't have to worry. All of us are working together, and I can focus on other things if I need to. And
It also gives you more of a chance to hear the rest of a piece.
Yes.
Yes.
Because
Very much
you've
so.
stopped concentrating on what you're doing and you're listening to the piece as a whole and the other parts, which is another good thing,
So it
which is
was-
what you should be doing.
Completely different.
Yeah.
The
It was
way
very
you-
good for us as a group. I think we changed
Yeah.
completely in that, and our standards for ourselves went up a great deal. And we're still, I think, trying to make our way back to the standards that
Yeah.
we reached. It was also terrifying even when we rehearsed, because everything in Bali, as you know, is fairly public. And where we were rehearsing was the
People
home
walk
of
off
another
the
gamelan
street,
group
yeah.
who were very good. And they would watch our rehearsals, and those of us who were sitting in the back would get visitors, because the other jegog player was very, very pretty. So there were a lot of chaps who came along to give us advice about how we could improve what we were doing and add variations and so on. I was so petrified just to get the notes right the first time. I just couldn't afford to listen. But we were getting advice, and people would stop on the street and stare in the windows and wander in to see what we were doing. And so one felt that one was constantly having to be good enough. It was good. It was very good. It kept us on our toes.
You learned to twirl your mallet.
And I learned to twirl my mallet. This was another sort of learning by observation. We went to see a contest, a kebyar contest, between two young groups from Gianyar and Badung, and there was so much spectacle involved, including flaming krisses, golden costumes, and lots of pangu twirling. But the Jegog players were the best because they did these double spins between notes, and since then Lila Cita has been trying to perfect the double spin Jegog pangu. We're not there yet, but we're working on it.
But, sorry, the best bit was we took recordings of when we played in Geox in Pakdibia's concert hall, and when I listen to them now, if I didn't know it was us playing, I'd think it was Balinese group, and that's my favourite thing ever. That we're almost as good as a Balinese group, if not on a par with.
That was the feedback, wasn't
Not
it?
a very good Balinese group, but a Balinese group.
A Balinese group, yeah.
But no, I think that is an achievement. I agree that I felt that I heard a few, just sort of more in the village streets, but I heard a few groups practicing things that I thought, yeah, we can play like that. That's not that much better than what we're doing.
Yeah.
In the festival, there's no comparison.
No.
But in the real world, you know, we're a first-rate, second-rate group, as Percy Granger used to say.
I'm not sure that that's fair. I've just come back from Bali, and I saw some groups who definitely were not even nearly as good as we are, even on a bad day.
Aha!
So,
Children's?
not all of them.
And how does it change the way you're practicing in London after the Bali Art Festivals? Did it change at all?
It's a
or-
constant struggle to be as good as you were.
It's a challenge.
It's a constant struggle. It's a challenge, yes.
There was more focus, there is more focus in the group. I mean, it kind of, as the group members change things, I mean, the kind of rehearsal style changes. But I mean, I remember when we came back, rehearsals were very kind of focused.
Sorry.
And
Call you in a minute.
Is that your phone making that funny noise?
Yeah, my phone.
we have a British style of rehearsal.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say. But we can emulate a Balinese style occasionally.
If we try hard.
Yeah, we do.
The big difference is the attitude to notation. Before we went, there was always a struggle in the group between people who wanted to use notation and people who didn't want to use notation. And it made learning very difficult because the people who did want to use notation tended to sound as if they knew a piece before they did know a piece, because they were reading a lot of it. And so those of us who didn't want to use notation struggled to keep up because we wouldn't rehearse enough to be able to really memorise the piece properly. And so we did used to go on stage with notation quite a lot. And even those of us who didn't want to use notation ended up having to use notation in order to keep up with those who did want to use notation. And when we were practicing for Bali, and during that period, we so got used to not using notation, and we so got used to the idea that it was the most ridiculous thing in the world to use notation. I wouldn't say that we don't now use notation, but we use it in a very different way. It's not ever used as a substitute for learning something. It's only used as a way to remember something between sessions. So I think the attitude in the group, there's nobody now in the group who says, oh, but I need it written down. People might write it down quietly if they need to remember something, but there isn't this sort of sense of that some people feel that it's unfair not to have it.